Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? Sacrifice. This is an adult story with language and content which may offend those easily offended. I can remember the sparkles, sunshine on water, at the river, that warm day in late spring. I remember the droplets on her skin, and I remember her eyes, her huge, childlike eyes, deep brown and clear and innocent, still unaware of her beauty, a child, her perfect sun-kissed legs. I couldn't keep my eyes off her. I thought, how long do I have? How long will it take her to finish her drink? Lips pouting round the rim. I didn't want it to end. A face like one of those perfect, golden ratio faces that artists paint. Every single freckle was perfect, but she was real. And was so beautiful, it could have made me cry. And when she dived into the river, swam, ran on the bank, I watched her, and I wanted her. I have skills, talents. Everyone knows I can charm, manipulate, lead them where I want them to go. Call me a wolf. But all wolves aren't the same. There is one kind with an amenable disposition, tame and gentle, following the young girls in the streets into their homes. The young girls don't know that these gentle wolves, out of all the wolves, are the most dangerous. Yes, I have skills. I know these girls. They go for the bad boy, and I am the likeness of a devouring wolf, strong and mighty, with great, large eyes, which in the night sparkle like fire, and a wide mouth with most sharp and cruel teeth, a strong body. They want me. They want the dangerous man. All the girls are racing to be the first to bleed, first to kiss, first to touch, first to fuck. It's not that they especially want any of these things, but they are terrified of being different, of being left behind. Stay with the flock. Keep in time. She, as much as the others, terrified of not being the perfect girl, the girl who speaks quietly and calmly, who is always kind and nice, never mean or bossy. She who wants to fit in, not lead or lag. So yes, could have had her, led her there like any of the others. But this one was different. I had imagined her and I, something real. I could have shown her things, many beautiful things, and excitement too. It was a dream, I know. I know it could never happen. Eventually I'd change, and it would all go bad. The moon or the season would call me, and I'd hurt her, knowing I didn't want to. It's too hard when it comes, not something you can fight. It just happens. They know that, the ones who choose the girl to wear the hood. In the end, they all know that in the end, the bloodlust prevails. Yes, I'd eat that heart, panting hot and raw. Eat that sweet, dainty morsel. I don't know why they had to send her, why they had to send this girl. Any girl would have been okay. Any young girl. Fresh, you know. They knew. I think they knew my feelings for her. They must have known when they chose her. When they gave her the robe and the hood. Chose her as the virgin. And they knew when they sent her out. They knew she had to die like the others. Like every year. Did that make it better? Stronger? They for sure didn't think of me. Why would they? None of them ever cared about me. Here we are on the path. Her rich cascade of auburn hair tumbling out from her hood. She's skipping, smiling, with that basket full of wine. Some bring cakes, bake things. But she knew her grandmother, and her grandmother, old hag, crept away. She knew what was coming. She left the door unlocked and sneaked into the forest, kept herself safe. That's not as she'll tell it, but that's how it was. Her name doesn't matter now. She is the blood, the offering. They've dressed her in the robe, the hood. She's on the path. Everyone knows where this ends. Everyone but her. They will speak of her by her robe. She had a name, Diani, sweet, soft Diani. Diani, always with a smile, and so generous, it was close to foolish. Her name meant dear, fitting, perhaps, now. Now she is just the girl in the red hood. If she wasn't here, now, sometime later, she would have taken my hand and drawn it onto her breast, and it would have been sweet. In that cottage, on that bed, and she'd love the soft skin of my penis on her lips, and she'd smile when I shuddered as I came inside her, like a child given a gift. But this afternoon isn't going to end like that. I hate them for that. I want to call a pack and hunt them all down. They should fear me now. Those cruel men choosing her, making me do this, the worst thing, the worst part of this nightmare. What is destroying what soul I have left is I know she will taste good, good as she looks. I have always loved the way she looks. Pale skin and that mass of dark hair tumbling out from her hood. Those child eyes. Too big, really. Those dark brown eyes. A beautiful child face on a woman. I want to look into them and for her to see me. The real me, you know? Not just the teeth. How long has this gone on? Thousands of years. I have read. Yes, I do read. I am educated. I have read the Greek. Pausanias knew the how and why. Told the story in which, each year, a virgin girl was offered to a malevolent spirit, offered as a sacrifice. And this spirit, dressed in the skin of a wolf, raped and ate the girl. They will tell another story, one that ends well. The girl will be rescued. Wishful thinking. A better story for their guilt. A happy fairy tale. Keep out of the woods. Don't speak to strangers. No one will mention Diani. They will agree, without words, not to mention her. They won't admit they chose the story. They chose the girl. I will be the malevolent spirit. Everyone believes there's a malevolent spirit. What does that mean, malevolent? I don't hate her. I do what they want. I do it for them. Someone has to. Someone always has. 1,000 girls, 1,000 innocent young girls, 1,000 virgins. So their crops will grow. So their gods will smile. I don the skin, the rank smelling skin, and pull the fangs into my mouth. It will haunt me. Next year, and the years after, all I will see is her eyes. I will see my teeth in her eyes. Watch her last moments, her confusion, and the rising fear. Her scream as I take her. Remember her hair tumbling from her hood. Remember the soft, sweet taste on my lips. As we stroll through the woods, the flowers mock me. They cover the peaceful, sun-dappled glades. Bluebells crowding round the base of the trees like flirting girls. Sweet-smelling columbine in the glades. The dog violet line her path. Bow as she walks to her sacrifice. Take your time, pick some flowers, I say. It's a lovely day. I know I'm going to do this. I know the flowers will cover the smell of your fear and your blood when I take you. Will help cover the stench when my teeth rip open your stomach. The gods will smile. They're bastard smiling gods. And the villagers, they all know it's happening. Duplicitous, lying, cruel bastards. They will cover it up again. They will tell their tales like they always do. But they know, they all know what big teeth I have and who I'm going to eat. Dig deep. Other than a faint glow coming from one of the back rooms, the town's charity shop was in darkness, its front door firmly closed. Although it had opened in 1985, the building had been used commercially since the 1800s, when it had variously been a pharmacy, a bank, and a tavern. The shop was close to the river in Marpleton, a pleasant English market town which had once been home to a nearby priory. In ancient times, monks had wandered back and forth to sell their wares at a market which still existed in diminished form across the road. Regulars were now peering through the shop window, but the main lights stayed off. A few of the shop's helpers were huddled in the back room. Patrick, the treasurer, had collected the spare keys from the greengrocer to let them in. The gatherers were addressing one topic, namely, why their long-serving manager, Rhea, had failed to open up the day before. "I just can't understand it," Ivy, one of the shop's founding members, said. "I've never known her not to turn up, unless she's on holiday. In all the years I've known Rhea, she's never had a day's sickness." "Wasn't she going to New Zealand to visit her sister?" Patrick asked. "She was, but not until the following week. It's in the shop diary. Here, take a look." Ivy tapped the relevant pages meaningfully. "I'm not doubting you, Ivy, but she may have got the dates wrong. She wasn't in the habit of making mistakes." Ivy's loyalty knew no bounds. Patrick adopted a different approach. "You've tried Rhea's landline, I take it, several times. Each time, it went straight to answer phone." "Right. Still, I expect we're worrying over nothing. But you have to admit, she has been a bit distracted lately," someone piped up. Patrick turned to Silvana hopefully, but she shook her head. "I've tried her on her mobile, but nothing." Silvana was a refugee who had joined the shop 2 years earlier. Since Rhea had taken her under her wing when she first came to England, her English had improved markedly. Silvana had been on the verge of admitting her true feelings for Rhea. Reality had crushed the likelihood of her returning to her homeland anytime soon, and been replaced by something entirely unexpected. An overwhelming love for another human being. Silvana's great wish was to know whether that love was returned. Rhea clearly liked her, but was it worth risking their friendship for more? The path to such an admission seemed littered with obstacles. Now, the mystery of Rhea's whereabouts could be added to an already growing list. Did Rhea say anything about changing her holiday plans, Silvana?" Patrick asked, determined to get to the bottom of things. "No, I went to her house for my lesson last Wednesday. She told me she'd be away all next week." Silvana had considered the matter carefully. "Yes, that is so." Patrick said. "I guess I'll have to contact the area manager about reopening the shop." "You'll need to do that. Volunteer phone numbers are stored in the locked cabinet, and only Rhea has the key," Ivy interjected. "Head office have contact numbers too." Everyone knew Rhea always carried a set of keys on a fob attached to a waistband. Patrick joked she secretly had a cellar key for the shop's more trying customers, to which he'd received an enigmatic smile. The actual cellar key had supposedly vanished in the mists of time. Certainly, there was no call to use the cellar, with ample storage space elsewhere. In any case, the cellar door was kept permanently locked, preventing anyone getting trapped if there was a fire. Patrick scrutinized the rota sheets. Maybe Judd would be willing to help if we reopen the shop, he suggested. Sylvana, who distrusted Judd, said nothing. 3 months earlier, dressed in black jeans and hoodie, and trailed by a mournful cocker spaniel, Judd had shown up to inquire about volunteering. When Sylvana had bent to pat his dog, it had backed off, whimpering. She gets nervous around new people, Judd had explained. Tucking away the banking money, Patrick had gone to fetch Rhea. A young man's inquiring about volunteering, he'd told her. Shall I send him through? What's he like? Rhea was wearily tapping information into the computer at her desk. He seems pleasant enough. His dog's rather nervous. Rhea massaged her aching neck. Send him through, she said. Rhea had confided in Sylvana about her difficulty in getting references for Judd Dig Deep. Eventually, he'd presented her with 2 typed ones, supposedly from an ex-employer. With typical thoroughness, Rhea had rung one of the numbers to learn more about the new helper. When a voice answered, sounding suspiciously like Judd's, she'd intended to investigate further. However, other things had intervened. A few weeks after this uncharacteristic omission, Judd was indeed proving to be an asset. Willing to turn his hand to anything, it was a relief not having to lift heavy sacks and boxes donated by the public from one end of the shop to the other. With little guidance, Judd had transformed one of the sorting rooms, leaving it immaculate. One evening, when Sylvana cycled past the back of the shop, she noticed a group of undesirables hanging with Judd, engrossed in conversation. She hurried past, hoping she hadn't been seen. She raised her concerns to Rhea, who told her it was nothing to worry about, that she'd keep an eye on things, and bafflingly added, I'd rather you didn't mention this to anyone else. Chun, the day the shop reopened, without Rhea at the helm, was Sylvana's birthday. Patrick invited her to join him later for one of his wife's specials, homemade pizza and pear wine. The food tasted delicious, but she pushed her plate to one side. You're still worried about Rhea, aren't you? Patrick observed. Her cell phone is dead. It's strange. I knocked on her door last night, but still no answer. Patrick got up. I tell you what, I happen to know Rhea's neighbor, Angela, from the book club. She looks after the garden when Rhea goes away. She may well have a spare key. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, but it wouldn't do any harm to check if everything is all right. Sylvana was relieved. That's a great idea. Thanks, Patrick. I've been known to have a few in my time. Come on, get your coat. Let's see if we can solve this mystery. Half an hour later, the pair were standing in Rhea's house. The hallway led into an open-plan kitchen diner with gleaming countertops and state-of-the-art gadgets. The smell of coffee lingered invitingly when Rhea's partner Lindsay had died 5 years earlier, she'd left her with a generous insurance payout. Sylvana sighed, remembering the other day when she and Rhea had drawn close over a bottle of wine. Rhea had even given her a present, only to be opened on your birthday, she instructed. But beneath the gaiety, she'd been out of sorts. Rhea had brushed aside Sylvana's offer of help with a brisk, "I'm fine. I'll check down here if you do upstairs," Patrick said, jolting Sylvana back to the present. The passport was lying on a bedside table. However, the photograph bore little resemblance to the person Sylvana had come to love and admire. Having spent time working for a private detective agency when she was younger, instinct overrode caution, and she began a meticulous search for clues. Predictably, Rhea's shop keys were lying on the bedside table. More unexpected was the discovery of another set of keys attached to a ring with a tag labeled "Cellar." "Are you all right?" Patrick called up from the bottom of the staircase. "I'm okay." Sylvana tucked the cellar keys into her bag. Then she remembered Rhea's present and opened it. She was surprised to find a pay-as-you-go phone, already charged up. "Well," Patrick exclaimed, "did you find anything?" "Just this." She gave him the passport. "That's odd. It appears she never made it to New Zealand after all. Maybe it's time to involve the police." "What? Right now? It is rather late. I doubt they'll want to be disturbed tonight." Patrick thought of the half-opened bottle of wine waiting back home. "I'll act tomorrow morning. Shall I walk you back?" "No need. I can take care of myself," Sylvana said firmly. Casa. The moon was her only companion as Sylvana descended the cellar steps at the back of the shop. With growing unease, she encased her hands in a pair of gloves and took off her shoes. She didn't want anyone to know of her presence. After 3 attempts, the door creaked open, and she was met by a cloying damp, overlaid by something else, something unpleasant. Tensing, she flicked on her phone torch and spotted a narrow corridor with another door at the end. Filled with foreboding, she slowly turned the handle. She smelt the body before she saw it. Wearing the trademark hoodie, the bloating, discolored thing in front of her, could hardly be called human. Judd lay slumped against an upturned table, his eyes staring and opaque. Sylvana covered her face with a handkerchief to prevent retching and inspected the scene, noting the bloodied head and smashed vase lying beside it. The blood had pooled and dried, staining the clothes and floor. She was no expert, but if the rotting undertones were anything to go by, death had probably occurred a few days earlier. Even then, horror was blunted by relief. So long as it wasn't Rhea, she had the strength for anything. But where was Rhea? Adjusting to the dimness, Sylvana tried to make sense of her surroundings. Some crudely constructed shelves, filled with storage tubs and packets, lay stacked against one of the walls. The place was obviously some kind of drugs den. Could Judd's death have been the result of a disagreement with other gang members? Silvana's stomach lurched. What if they turned up and found her? She'd only just locked the cellar door and picked up her shoes when she heard voices on the driveway. Somehow, she managed to scramble behind one of the bins underneath the fire escape. Hardly daring to breathe, she waited until the scuffling feet passed, and the gang disappeared down the cellar steps. Then, she bolted into the night as fast as her trembling legs would carry her. She would decide what to do when she got home. So, halfway across the town's park, muffled ringtones came from her bag. "Silvana?" The voice was clear as day at the other end of the line. "Ria, is it really you? Thank God. Are you all right? Where are you calling from? Talk to me. If I tell you, you must keep it to yourself," Ria said urgently. "Of course. By the way, I have your keys." "The shop keys? The cellar keys? Long story. I have just been down there. I found him. Judd. Dead. It was horrible." Silvana began to laugh hysterically as the shock kicked in. "You went into the cellar?" Ria repeated. "Why? I needed to know if you were all right. I was so afraid I was going to find you, not him. When I saw your passport, I knew you couldn't have gone abroad, that something must have happened. I didn't get the chance. What happened? I will tell you, but not now, not on the phone. Patrick is planning to go to the police tomorrow about your passport," Ria asked. "Did you touch anything when you went into the cellar? Did you touch him?" "No." Silvana's teeth were chattering from shock. "It's cold outside. I was wearing gloves." "But what do you know about Judd? Why were you wearing gloves?" "I don't know. I had a bad feeling. I didn't want to be implicated in anything. Back home, I once worked at a detective agency. I learned about not touching crime scenes." "You may want to call the police," Ria said. "But please, can I ask you not to tell them I got in contact, or about me giving you the phone? We'll meet soon. That is, if you want to. I'll understand if you don't want anything more to do with me." "Of course I want to meet you." It seemed silly pretending now. "It's all I think about." Silvana's heart flipped when she saw the distant figure standing on the pier below. The matinee performance at the Pavilion Theater was in full swing, and the pier was almost deserted. She came up behind Ria, patting her on the shoulder. "Hey," Ria turned, instantly relaxing when she saw her friend. "Hey." Silvana sank into Ria's arms. For a long time, the pair embraced. "It's so good to see you," Silvana said. "Likewise." Ria glanced round. "Does anyone know you're here?" "No." "And I'm so hungry." Ria grinned. "How about some fish and chips? I'll treat you." "You mean the famous English fish and chips?" Ria grinned. "I've discovered a great place on the front." She linked arms with Silvana. "Come on, let's eat. Then I'll tell you everything." Judd was a bad lot," Ria admitted later. "He was running a drug racket, and I threatened to report him to the police. It doesn't surprise me. But how did you find out?" "Not long after I joined the shop. I was clearing up one of the back rooms and came across a discarded cabinet. There were 2 sets of cellar keys in it. I never told anyone about them, partly because I didn't want a lot of fuss. I wanted to keep it to myself. Unfortunately, Judd caught me coming up the stairs one evening and demanded to store his things there. I didn't like the way he spoke to me. When I refused, he threatened to torture his dog in front of me. He implied if I didn't comply, I'd be next. His eyes were so cold. For the second time in my life, I felt real fear. There would be time enough to ask about the first time, Silvana thought, clasping Ria's hand. I'm afraid there's more, Ria said dully. You probably won't want anything to do with me when you hear the rest. Silvana clutched Ria's hand more tightly. She'd come too far to be brushed aside. Why don't you let me be the judge of that? She said firmly. Whatever it is, we'll bear it together. You see, I love you. I need you to know that. You do? For a moment, Ria's face shone. That's a relief, she said, laughing. I thought it was just me. Did you? Silvana laughed too. I may have had my suspicions, but I didn't want to say anything. Oh, I'm so happy, Silvana said. But hold your horses before we get carried away, Ria warned. Hold my horses? An English expression. It means don't count your chickens. Count my chickens? Silvana, my love, let me finish my story before you say anything. Okay, sorry. Silvana nibbled a stray chip. Ria was smiling in spite of everything. In the end, I couldn't stand being held to ransom by a bully like Judd. A few days ago, I foolishly decided to confront him in the cellar. He went to grab a knife from the table. There was an old jar on one of the shelves, and as he turned, I smashed it over his head. She shuddered. I couldn't tell you all this, but I made sure you had the phone before I left. I hoped you'd stay in touch. The day after, I headed here, not wanting to be traced. I paid for everything with cash, but surely the police will realize you only acted in self-defense, Silvana insisted. Perhaps I should have gone to them straight away, but I couldn't face it. Ria's hesitation was palpable, especially considering what? In spite of the warmth between them, Silvana felt a sudden chill, like someone walking over a grave. What aren't you telling me? Ria's voice broke. I'm terminally ill. At best, I only have months to live. At worst, it will be weeks. I have all the medication I need. I just want to spend my last days in a place with happy memories. I can't believe it. But Silvana knew Ria was speaking the truth. She tried to disguise her anguish. How long have you known? She whispered. I only found out for certain the day before Judd threatened me in the cellar. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. I should have told the police everything long before, but by then, I was in too deep. I'm going to stay with you. Silvana had never been more certain of anything. Ria shook her head. Stay with me tonight, and go back tomorrow. It won't be long before the police check the cellar. It will look odd if you're not there. I have every faith in your survival skills. Look how far you've come. In the meantime, there's something I want you to have. What is it? Ria handed Silvana 2 envelopes. Inside one is a plan of the cellar. After years of searching, I think I may have finally uncovered the sealed entrance to a tunnel leading to the old priory. My father was a historian and suspected there might be one near the shop. The other is a copy of my will. It's my final and dearest wish to make your life better when I've gone. Friday the 13th. The storm had been brewing all day. An ominous black sky that only got darker as the hours passed. Perfect for a Friday the 13th, especially one in October. Flynn and I had been working all day at Rewind Rentals, the shop busy with locals picking up horror films to fuel their spooky movie marathons. Upstairs, at the Rewind Theater, we'd been showing a lineup of old-school classics. Freddy Krueger, Halloween, even The Company of Wolves for the hardcore fans. I was setting up the projector in the small, cozy theater room. A bowl of popcorn resting against my hip. The audience, mostly townies who liked the idea of watching horror movies in the vintage ambiance of the theater, settled into their worn velvet chairs with drinks, candy, and buttery popcorn. Flynn had put together a killer playlist for the pre-show, layering eerie sounds between trailers for other horror films. The first jump scare in Halloween was coming up, just as the weather outside began to turn nasty. A sudden, deafening crack of thunder echoed through the building. Lightning illuminated the theater windows, and everyone jumped in their seats, right on cue with the movie. I couldn't help but laugh. The timing too perfect to be planned. The storm had really picked up, pouring rain rattling against the windows. It made the dim lights in the shop downstairs flicker, which I only noticed as I left the theater and headed back down. Flynn had snuck off a little earlier, saying something about grabbing the next movie for the queue. I descended the creaky stairs, the hum of the old films playing through the walls. Just as I reached the last step, lightning flashed again, and the room went momentarily white, followed by a boom of thunder that seemed to shake the very floor beneath me. I shook my head, grinning to myself. Flynn loved Friday the 13th, especially one as dramatic as this. "Flynn," I called out, stepping behind the counter to check the register, fully expecting him to pop out from some shadowy corner, and of course, he did. He timed it just as another bolt of lightning struck. Diving out from behind a row of horror movies, with a loud "boo," I screamed, slapping his arm instinctively, and he burst into laughter, pulling me close before I could get away. His lips found mine in a soft, warm kiss. The contrast to the storm outside, making it feel all the more comforting. "You're too easy," Flynn teased, brushing his thumb over my cheek. Always so jumpy, I rolled my eyes, trying to ignore the way my pulse quickened. "Yeah, Well, I have a reason to be, especially on nights like this. Something weird always happens on Friday the 13th. I'm starting to think I'm cursed. Flynn raised an eyebrow, that familiar smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Oh? And what makes you say that? I sighed, stepping back and leaning against the counter as I crossed my arms, the rain tapping against the windows behind me. Okay, so remember last year when I was doing the end-of-day paperwork behind the desk? He nodded, waiting for me to continue. I looked up, and there was this guy standing by the horror section, I said, feeling a little chill run down my spine at the memory. He was wearing this creepy mask, like one of those old porcelain doll faces, and just staring at me. Flynn's grin faded, his expression shifting from amused to something more serious. Wait, what? Who was he? That's the thing. I don't know. I didn't hear the bell ring when he came in, and when I greeted him, he didn't say anything. He just kept watching me while he browsed the shelves. Okay, that's seriously messed up, Flynn said, taking a step closer. What happened after? Well, I kept trying to act normal, you know? Like maybe he was just one of those weird horror buffs who gets really into it. I shrugged, feeling the goosebumps rise on my arms. But then he was just gone. No bell, no nothing. 1 second he was there, the next he wasn't. Jesus, Amelia, that's creepy as hell, Flynn muttered, looking around as if expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. What the hell is wrong with people? Coral Cove is supposed to be safe. Yeah, well, that's what I thought too. But every Friday the 13th, something strange happens. I glanced over at the old TV sets lining the back wall, one of them flickering ominously, as if the storm outside had seeped into the electronics. Flynn shook his head. That's insane. Did you ever find out who it was? Nope. Never saw him again, I replied, my voice softer now. I even checked the cameras, but nothing. Flynn stared at me for a moment, clearly freaked out by the story. Before he could say anything else, another loud clap of thunder boomed through the shop, making the old bells on the door chime, just as the lightning flashed again. I froze for a split second, watching the window, and Flynn turned to look at the door. When he glanced back at me, his eyes widened, and he took a step back. Flynn let out a yell, nearly tripping over the counter stool in his panic. I couldn't help it. I burst into laughter. I had slipped on the same creepy mask from the back room, the one we kept for Halloween decorations. You should have seen your face, I howled, tears of laughter streaming down my cheeks as I pulled the mask off. Priceless! Flynn clutched his chest, breathing heavily, before shaking his head at me. You're a menace, he said, stepping forward and wrapping his arms around me. And I don't know why I put up with you, I grinned, tilting my head up to meet his gaze. "Because you love me," I teased. He rolled his eyes, but leaned down to kiss me again. The storm outside, a distant rumble compared to the warmth between us. "Yeah, I do," he murmured, pulling me closer. The rain kept falling. The thunder rolled. And in that small, cozy corner of Coral Cove, surrounded by dusty VHS tapes and flickering lights, we felt untouchable, no matter how cursed the night might be. Oh, muse. Oh, catharsis. My legs were on fire by the time they left the ground. I surged upward like a spark, stretching my arms toward the ceiling, grabbing, reaching. I landed hard on my calloused soles. Once more, then, I leapt, gaining height. The third jump took me higher still, and as I returned to the floor, catching sight of myself in the mirror, I rolled my whole body downward. I found a strange foundation there in the scuffed surface, and I allowed this discovery to take root in the depths of my stomach. It tugged me to the ground like a magnet, providing momentum as I sank. I felt my whole body contort with it, bending in half, caught, flailing like a moth in a web. "Stop! Stop!" His voice echoed sharply off the white walls, the beating of a mighty drum. It startled me out of my panting half-trance, and Louisa, the stage manager, a severe, spectacled woman in a beige blouse, reached out a hand to pause the tape player. The music, that music, driving, discordant, utterly electric, screeched to an abrupt halt. There was silence. Tugging down my shirt, I averted my gaze from the mirror and extended one leg, gently trying to loosen my muscles. But booming in that same voice, the voice of the giant that he was, he rose from his chair and began to circle me like a desert bird. "You're dragging, Hector," he said. "You're descending into the earth too slowly. You understand? You lack impetus." His words rattled his throat as though it were an iron cage. The dance is precise. That is the challenge of it, yes? It looks wild. It feels wild when you are in it, I know. But it is precise. It is specific. Every motion has intention. 1, 2, 3. He slammed his foot with each word, punctuating them with the thump, thump, thump of his shoe. He rocked his pelvis down, trying to mime for me what exactly I was ruining. And while he could no longer exert himself the way he could in his youth, I saw the whisper of strength in his limbs, the dancer, the echo of the titan he once and still was. At that moment, I hated myself for dancing badly. Really, the only thing worse than dancing badly is knowing that you are dancing badly, that others can tell you are dancing badly, I never imagined I would dance badly before Dimitri Lamoureux. I never imagined I would be dancing this piece before Dimitri Lamoureux, choreographer, director, writer, living legend. He had, in his prime, created 6 variations of what he called human dramas with music. Not quite musicals, but real, honest-to-God works of art. And in my mind, they still towered over the blockbusters dominating Broadway at the time. Louisa, his longtime collaborator, had worked on every premiere and some revivals, such as this one. Lucky her. Lamoureux had practically invented a new language of movement, a language which would inspire crude imitation after crude imitation. Yet, nothing compared. He had flown close to some secret glory, some cosmic thing that no other artist had ever even glimpsed. He was Icarus, never fallen, and I was just me, stupid, out-of-work me. Through dumb luck, I never believed they really liked me in that singing prescription pill commercial. I would actually get to perform No Place, the No Place, that seminal solo dance from Human Drama with Music Number 1, Catabasis. It was not quite a featured 20-minute dream ballet. No. In fact, it had been described by at least one critic as a night terror. Primal, cerebral, something that burrowed into a person's head. It was a career maker, though. The role of the dancer had no dialogue, and sure, it spent most of the show backstage. I hadn't even rehearsed with the rest of the cast yet, but if I could step out and command the room for just 6 minutes and 18 seconds, I would get to do this, and nothing but this forever, until my body gave out. And I wanted that more than anything. I saw a grainy recording of No Place on PBS as a child. Flipping through the channels in that little apartment, my knees digging into the living room carpet, I paused as a lone figure emerged onto a darkened stage. Dressed in gray fabric, hunched in a solitary white spotlight, his body heaved with bracing breaths. Ignited by a swell of wind and the crash of drums, he spun in a circle before bending backward completely, with a flexibility I could only hope to one day possess. With each movement, though, with each count, I found myself drawing closer and closer until I was practically pressed flush against the screen, near enough that I could feel the cold static pricking the skin of my face. Poised like that, I extended both my arms outward and began crudely mirroring the dancer's steps. Back up, Hector. How many times do I gotta tell you? You're gonna burn your goddamn eyes out, my father growled. Coming up behind me, he ripped the remote from my hands and changed the channel. He barked at me for blocking the picture, but I had already seen the dance. I had seen it, and having seen it, I craved it, like I had tasted blood. And from that day forward, I devoured TV listings whenever I found them, flipped through magazines in grocery stores, or turned on the guide channel to let it roll. Blue in the static dark, searching, hoping it would appear again. I had asked my mother for lessons once, I remember, but she never really gave me an answer. I think she hoped I would simply forget. Not because she didn't want me to have them, no, but because he wouldn't have wanted me to. I had overheard one morning a suggestion that he would smash my toes if he caught me standing on them, like a ballerina. I figured she had broached the subject. Either way, they aired the recording of Catabasis again in the autumn, very late at night, long past the hour I would be in bed, or sensible people would be watching. But I had planned for it. For weeks, I had been saving wherever I could. Change from lunch, or from errands to the corner store. Standing in the doorway to my bedroom, one eye on the alarm clock, I, knowing I couldn't be late, clutched the blank VHS tape to my chest. I had scrounged up just enough to buy it for this singular, solemn purpose. I had made this walk many, many times. The long corridor past my parents' bedroom to the living room. And I knew, by then, that I had to take the trek in threes, extending my legs every third step to avoid the spots where the floor creaked. I listened to my father's snoring, holding my breath as I moved, 3 by 3, avoiding the noise, avoiding the discovery, only to take off running as soon as I felt carpet. Hurrying to the television, I muted it with the remote before shoving the tape into the VCR. And as soon as I was sure that little red light was blinking, I watched. Yeah, I watched. And I mirrored the silent movements as if compelled, as if called. And while I didn't learn to dance for real until high school, when I could spend more time outside the house, I did dance for real that night. I hid the tape in a corner of my closet and snuck it out again and again, whenever the opportunity arose, until it broke, and I couldn't even rewind it anymore. I'm sorry. I'm in my head. I can do it, I said at last, speaking to Lamoureux in the mirror of the rehearsal room. I shifted my eyes to the floor, but he pulled up my chin, forcing me to look at myself. I know you can, Hector. We saw it in your audition. Do that. Shall we run the section again? Louisa asked. Her finger hovered over the tape player. No. I'm tired of sections. We've been doing nothing but sections. Let's weave them together now. He needs to feel the full scope. Yes? He locked eyes with my reflection. You can do the full piece? From the top? I nodded, because I did not know what else to do. And I realized in that moment that, more than anything, I wanted to impress him. I didn't want him to regret entrusting me, of all the dancers in the world, with this most sacred thing. And so I lapsed into my pre-routine. Walking in a circle, the wood cold beneath my feet, I counted my steps in threes, stretching my legs at every third, out of habit or tradition or superstition. I rolled my hands downward next, running my pointer finger along each of my toes, counting out all 10 before taking my place before the mirror. Lamoureux settled back in his chair with a grunt, and turning to Louisa, I gave a nod. She pressed a few buttons, and with a low analog whir, the music began. I exhaled, my whole chest heaving, and counting to myself, I began. Turning, whirling, writhing, I bent myself backward, stretching my entire torso. Lamoureux, too, began keeping time, stomping away with his foot, watching every movement I made, driving me forward, taking hold of the energy I was hurling out into the space. Thump, 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 thump. Each beat seeped into me, filling the pores of my thrashing body and setting my muscles ablaze. I blinked, and at first, I was not even sure I had seen it. It began as something of a flicker of light, a vague shadow over my left shoulder, almost a smudge on the mirror. The music hastened, and Lamoureux thumped time. And as if keeping up with it, the thing in the glass moved. I spun too, and it seemed to spin with me. But locked into the dance, I did not stop to look. No, I spun. And I spun lost completely. And with each turn, the shape seemed to take more solid form until I, facing the mirror, panting, aching, could see it, really see it. Skeletal limbs, impossibly long, arachnid almost, pulsed with tendons and throbbing red veins. It swayed back and forth, collapsing and contorting in on itself, creating and uncreating, almost imitating my movement, but stretching them to the mocking brink. It was a figure, a rotting husk, forged as if from teeth and flesh and living darkness. It moved in a way nothing I had ever seen moved. Choreographed chaos. A star imploding in on itself. A jellyfish. And yet, a man bending completely in half, twitching. It flipped its torso upside down, and its swollen head smacked the floor with a sickening, wet crunch. Somewhere beneath the thumping, I thought I could hear a raw, splintering noise, one that could burrow into a person's skull, digging like claws through grave dirt. Its spine had shattered, I thought. It had snapped itself in half, and yet continued to move. Beneath the music, I could hear the sick, screeching grind of bone on bone. Thump, thump, thump. I leapt, then just as I had leapt before, unable to stop, I stretched my arms upward, once, twice, 3 times, The thing leapt with me, limbs flailing, fingers breaking, twisting and cracking as it furled them toward the ceiling. I cried out, landing hard on the floor, traveling too far in the final leap, plummeting askew. The illusion broke. I rolled upward, legs burning, trying to catch my breath. I almost thought I would vomit. And when I looked, there was nothing in the mirror. Oh, why don't we take a break? Louisa was the one to crack the strange stillness that settled over us. Her voice firm as she stood from her chair and pierced the catacomb that the rehearsal room had become. Step into the hallway, Hector. Are you all right? Do you need me to file an injury report? Why don't you get some water? I was working too hard, I thought, as I slumped against the wall in the corridor. Closing my eyes, I took a long swig from my bottle, using the back of my hand to wipe away the layer of sweat that now drenched my brow. The shape in the mirror flashed into my thoughts like a thunder crack. I winced. There had been nothing there, I decided. Of course there had been nothing there. Nobody else had reacted, so there had been nothing there. An absent-minded hand came down to rub my knee through my tights, and for a moment, I was a little kid again. I could feel the living room carpet digging into my bare legs as I let my thoughts drift to that apartment, to my mother, to my father, and to that low-quality VHS recording, to the countless nights I spent caught in the dull glow of the television, dancing in the dark. Louisa came to collect me 15 minutes later, and as I stepped back into the rehearsal room, assuring her I was just fine, I saw that she had taped a wide blue circle onto the floor. You traveled too far last time, Lamoureux said from his perch. I had Louisa mark the edges of the stage. It's shaped like a disc. You must stay within the circle, understand? Are you ready to try again? Yes, but I was just thinking. I mean, sitting out there, I know why I'm falling behind. I first saw this piece on television, the PBS recording, hundreds of times. And the dancer only jumps once. During the climax, he only jumps once. I'm jumping 3 times, I explained. It throws off the next measure for me. So I'm behind the music, and then I rush. Louisa dropped her script on the floor, interrupting me and catching Lamoureux's attention. He looked back to me after a moment. I remember that dancer from the recording, he said. He was a last-minute replacement. He was not like you. He lacked stamina. He lacked strength. Could not do all 3 jumps and keep going, so we had to alter it. The cameras were already there, and the show must go on, yes? But you have the ability to perform the piece as conceived, Hector. It's why we chose you. 3 jumps. Forget what you know. Watching him, I felt something strange fluttering in my stomach. Maybe it was nausea. Maybe it was embarrassment at him trying to flatter me. but it was enough. I walked my circle of threes, counted my toes, and straightened up. And looking at Louisa, I gave a nod. The music began. It was different this time, I thought. My whole body struck by a new momentum. I lurched to the left and then to the right, writhing downward, finding each moment, each breath, each precise movement. Lamoureux was not thumping, and while I only caught glimpses of him as I spun, something odd bubbled across his face. Excitement, maybe, or pleasure, and I had done it, I thought. I had danced before the master, and at last I had done it well. Still, I found that I dared not look in the mirror. Not really. Dared not allow my eyes to focus too long on my reflection, lest I see the mover. Some part of me, even then, thought maybe it was still lurking there. I jumped. Once, twice, 3 times, extending my arms, my feet finding the floor as I plummeted down, sinking into the earth. I rolled, discovering that solid foundation again, finishing the dance with one final gasp as the music surged and ended in a cacophony. I had done it, panting, soaked, breathless. I looked up, then my limbs ablaze. I looked up, and there simply was no mirror. In its place, there was only an unbroken wall of black, an abyss. Something moved within it, though, dancing through the void, crunching, whirling, twisting, and thumping. I watched it now, watched the way it transfigured itself. It was almost divine. Some odd part of my brain thought, the way it moved, like nothing else had ever moved. Stunning, yes? Lamoureux said, coming up behind me as I knelt there. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Louisa joined him, and all 3 of us looked. Do not be afraid. It dwells there, in the dark. No man in no place. Yes, always there, I think, just beyond what we can see, at least until we descend into it ourselves. He laughed. Do not look for the dead in the glass. You'll not like it. He squeezed my arm. The dance, exactly as devised. 3 jumps when not in public performance, thins the veils, allows us to see. A ritual, if you like. Are we artists, not magicians? And David danced before the Lord with all his might. Louisa and I have not seen in a long time. But I can no longer dance like you. What is it? I asked hoarsely. Do I know? A muse? It moves like the breath of the universe, walks the edge of it. An echo of what has always been. Maybe God. Reductive, but to filter even one part of it for mortal eyes, to be able to imitate some whisper of its aspect. Transcendent. Look, it's choreographing our next masterpiece. I don't understand. Inspiration chooses, Hector. It chose me. He ducked down to speak into my ear. I knew when you gushed about that videotape at your audition. Catabasis has never been recorded for broadcast. Why then did you and only you see it? How? To learn. My eyes widened. So be its filter, be its mirror, be sainted. I rose. I watched. My legs burned. Lamoureux had chosen me because it had chosen me. Yes, I thought. Yes, I wanted it. Me. Out of work, me. The filter. Chosen. I danced. Kala. The de Havilland. Twin Otter charter plane shuddered through gray clouds as its mouthy pilot wrestled with the controls, navigating toward the barely visible landing strip ahead. Like the plane's humming engines, the bearded Inuit's mouth hadn't stopped buzzing since we'd taken off from Iqaluit 3 hours before, and my tolerance for both noises had grown slim. Happily, the end of this ordeal was in sight. The small hamlet Mitimatalik, known as Pond Inlet, which we were rocking and tilting down towards. From this vantage point, and in this dawn-greeting, sleet-spitting weather, the village at the northernmost tip of Baffin Island appeared little more than a shadowy cluster of shacks dwarfed by glaciers in the distance. It looked every bit the town at the end of the world it was, and exactly the kind of place you'd find someone like her. I'm just saying, the pilot continued, having received approval to land. I get it, the dating world's tough, but coming all the way to Mitimatalik for a woman? All she wants is a ticket out of this dump. No amount of hot flesh on a cold night is worth being taken for a ride. I forced another smile, though my lips were resistant, watching the landing strip lights glow brighter. Like I said, she's got a wonderful personality, I said, for the 15th time. You don't have to worry. Not everyone's a scammer, spoken like a love-struck fool with more money than sense. The pilot laughed. Well, I hope it goes okay. At least you've got your return flight booked. I'll be back tomorrow, same time. But if you're not here, with or without your girl, I'll be gone. No refunds. I nodded, staring out at the endless expanse of snow that had become visible as dawn broke. Calling it dawn at 10 to noon seemed wrong, but that's what it was this time of year, during Nunavut's polar night, when the sun barely rose above the horizon, and daylight, more twilight, didn't last long. A 1 to 2 hour period of faint light that quickly retreated to darkness. It suited me fine, because it suited Kala, December 5th. The body of 35-year-old Naki Pakta is discovered in Rankin Inlet, Kivalik, having bled out from multiple stab wounds. The nature of the injuries is baffling. The star-shaped structure of the wounds suggests they were inflicted from within. No murder weapon is found. No persons of interest are identified. Naki is found in a remote area outside the town, half buried in a mat of Arctic heather. Kala wasn't my online girlfriend, or the catfish the pilot suspected. That was a convenient lie. This time tomorrow, he'd either laugh at me or pat me on the back, depending on how things went. Both eventualities were covered. The plane convulsed as we landed, tires skidding briefly before finding their grip. Then we came to a halt at the terminal, a corrugated outhouse set against a dull, hazy backdrop. "Here we are," he said, grinning through his beard. "Good luck with your woman. You'll need it." I thanked him and disembarked with backpack and camera. The biting cold stabbed me, but I didn't flinch. I inhaled sharply, the icy air burning my lungs, and made my way deeper into the ghost-like outpost of swirling snowflakes, the most remote place I'd ever come to meet a subject. Beyond the airstrip, the snow-covered streets of Mitimatalik were deserted. Dim street lamps illuminated squat, weather-beaten buildings, wide-eyed structures that seemed to huddle together to keep warm and endure the endless night, which had introduced insomnia, sleep paralysis, and nightmares to their eaves. December 10th. Aputi Kanuk, 38, is discovered in his pickup in Whale Cove. The insides of the cab are painted red. Police are baffled. The Inuit sports hundreds of wounds, pinpricks that seem to have punctured the flesh from within. There is nothing untoward in the vehicle, just some strands of heather in the footwell. I passed residences with lights glowing in windows, stores hibernating like frost-covered monuments, and vehicles remade as ice sculptures. I didn't pass people, even though it was midday and as bright as it was going to be for another 24 hours. Nobody was getting their steps in. But that's not to say no one was out. As the snowfall grew thicker and I approached a junction in the road, laughter reached my ears from my destination, Ukpik Tavern, where, according to Sigil, the woman I was seeking should be. A few more steps, and it materialized. A nondescript bar that doubled as a restaurant, dull light spilling through the window. A wooden sign above the door creaked as I pushed through. Inside, I took a moment to shake off the cold and the snow before making my way to a table. The bar was decorated simply, with wooden tables and chairs, and a fireplace burning thick logs. A handful of locals were seated, meeting friends for lunch during this nighttime reprieve. They eyed me with mild suspicion as I came in. I made a show of checking my camera and placing it on the table like it was sacred. They looked away. Just another rich tourist or hipster blogger come to photograph the northern lights. Boring. A barman with a ducktail beard that somehow looked better than mine sauntered over as I shrugged off my parka. He informed me The bar was closing at 1:30, an hour and a bit from now. He noted my Nikon and the guidebook for neighboring Bylot Island I'd placed on the table. He didn't ask why I was here. I ordered beer and a bowl of caribou stew, then settled down to warm myself and wait. I didn't have to wait long. She came out of the men's room, carrying a mop and bucket, head high as she went behind the bar. The information I'd received had been correct. Not that I doubted it. Sigil was always correct. And though she looked older than 40 and heavier than 180 pounds, she was recognizable as the person who'd been described. Her face was weather-beaten. Strands of gray threaded her braided hair, and the birthmark on her neck was visible above the folds of her jumper. It was her, December 15th. Panic spreads through the Kivalik region as a third body is found. The frozen corpse of Nuvuk Kayuk, 42, is discovered at the foot of a cliff in Chesterfield. It seems he may be the victim of a fall, until he is thawed out and the stab wounds appear. Multiple star-shaped incisions that confirm murder, but there are no clues to be found, except the cluster of heather in his grasp. I received my glass of amber liquid and bowl of meat and veg, which I ate and drank slowly, watching her interact with the locals. She had an infectious laugh and a warm voice. I gathered she'd worked here a while. She seemed kind, not like one who could hurt another. But appearances are deceptive. I knew that better than most. Time crawled as I finished eating. Every so often, she'd look in my direction, flash a smile or nod, and I'd look away. I didn't need to make a connection. Not yet. Shortly after 1:15, the locals started getting up to leave. I drained my glass and pulled on my coat. It had been a successful visit. I'd found who I was looking for and gotten a feel for her form. Despite her slight bulk, there was no question she could handle herself. Behind the smiles and laughs, she could wield violence. I paid my bill and left. Outside, it was already black, the brief daylight hours having retreated. The snowfall had ceased, as if scared back into hiding by the night. Pond Inlet was silent, except for the now muted voices of the locals, who slunk out of the tavern behind me, showing less than zero interest in this photo-hunting fool. Stepping onto the stoop of what appeared to be a post office, I took cover in the shadows and fished out my vape. Blood, orange, and charcoal. My flavor of choice. Enough bite to keep me alert, though, of course, I had Sigil for that. And as if on cue, to remind or reprimand me, a sudden cackle of noise penetrated my ear, making me wince as I cupped it. It was a garbled message, like always, broken syllables that were difficult to understand. but whose meaning was clear. I was on the right track, and things were escalating. Kala was about to strike again. December 21st. The remote community of Arctic Bay, Qikiqtaaluk, is shaken by the discovery of Panaa Pictou, 39, found dead while camping on the outskirts of town. Her body, exsanguinated, sports familiar stab wounds. A charred stem of heather is found in her campfire's ashes. 4 Inuit are dead, killed in mysterious fashion. The killer remains at large. I'd taken the 3rd pull on my vape when the bar door opened and my target stepped out, wrapped in a sealskin coat. I couldn't see her face, but I knew from her gait it was her. She didn't waste time, stomping off towards the far end of town, where the street lamps petered out and darkness reigned. I gave her a minute's head start. The snow would record her path. She wasn't expecting me, so she wouldn't try to give me the slip. I took another drag and waited for the barman to lock up before setting off. I activated my Nikon's night vision function and kept an eye on its view screen as I followed her tracks. The buildings thinned out as I left town until there was nothing left but rocks and snow. Somewhere ahead was a forest, but I couldn't make it out. What I could make out was a flat, oblong structure surrounded by a chain link fence. I didn't know what the building was, but the footprints led to it. So that's where I went. A hole had been cut in the fence, spliced wires bent back. I ducked to slip through the gap, careful not to snag my Canada Goose parka, then slunk through the snow to the building. What I could now guess was some kind of supply station. It was abandoned, at least for the winter, but its door had been forced to admit 1 guest. 2, as I eased it open. 3, if Kaala's trap had already been set. I winced in anticipation of a squeal. It didn't come, and I was able to enter a cluttered office lit by a battery-powered lantern. Empty crates and barrels filled the space. Paperwork lay scattered on the floor. In one corner was a sleeping bag, a rucksack, and a small heater. A seal-skin coat lay next to the heater, which had been plugged in and was starting to glow. Clever. This wasn't her home. She was using this place as a lure. A crash and a yell brought my eyes to the door behind a dusty reception, and I started towards it, depositing my camera on the desk. Thought you could sneak up on me, eh? Thought you could take me like the others? A thud, a cry, a slam. I reached the door, which was slightly ajar, and peered through. I knew you'd find me, you bitch. But guess what? I got ready. In my ear, Sigil was humming, spitting instructions in urgent, guttural tones. I winced and ignored. I knew what to do. Like Twinak Itukalak, I was ready. So I pulled open the door and stepped through. It was a large storage area. illuminated by more lanterns on aluminium shelving units that had been rearranged haphazardly. The shelves, which were presumably used to store produce in normal times, now displayed nothing but flowers, lots of flowers, potted and in full bloom, which was odd because of the season and because of what Sigil told me to bring. Killed Nuvuk, killed Panna. Now I'll kill you. For real this time. The words accompanied more thumps and cries, and then something else, an unnatural keening. I peered around one of the shelving units and found the source of the noise. Jovial, happy Tuinak from the bar, straddling the Inuit Kala, slamming her head against the floor as she tried to sing a song. A window on the opposite wall was up. That's how Kala had entered. Seeing the flowers would have made her feel safe, given her confidence, inspired bravado. Of course, that's how Tuinak had made ready. A second glance at the nearest flower confirmed it. All the potted plants in here were plastic. Shut up, witch. There's nothing here you can use. Tuinak slammed Kala's head harder. The dark-haired, younger woman's words faltered, but she quickly resumed her bird-like song, an eerie, chirping sound that made me shiver. Tuinak's back was to me. Kaala's eyes found me as I shucked off my bag. She was surprised, but didn't react. I could see in her eyes she was broken. I could see in her face she was weak. She'd been trekking for weeks through darkness, making her way up from Tukik, stopping at townships on the way. This was her last stop, but she was tired, hungry. The net was closing in, and she'd underestimated the last of her prey. I'd come to help. Hey, I said, startling Tuinak as I unzipped my bag. Haven't you hurt her enough? Who the fuck? Your turn. I removed a potted plant of Arctic heather, real, not plastic, from my bag and put it on the floor, then kicked it towards the barmaid with my foot. Tuinak's eyes went wide. Kala's fluttered shut, but her cracked lips continued to warble. Stop! Tuinak spat, falling away from the plant. I watched as its leaves began to tremble in response to the quickening of Kaala's song. In my time and profession, in the circles I traveled, and amongst the fiends I called my crew, I'd seen my share of weird shit. But I'd never seen anything like this. I'd never known an animist, someone who could control earthy matter with their voice. So this was one for the books. Kala's eyes snapped open, and as she started to sing, shout her words, the plant reacted. Its stems lengthened, stretching toward Tuinak like snakes. The soft leaves twisted and hardened, curling into deadly thorns. The petals flared, exposing a dark, pulsing core. Tuinak tried to flee, but the heather was fast. Thorny stems wrapped around her limbs, pulling her down. the more she struggled, the tighter they constricted. Ka'ala sat up and sang louder, and the heather responded. Vines forced their way into Tuanach's mouth, grew down her throat, muffling her screams as they choked her. I watched as she convulsed, thorns punching out through her throat. She squeezed her eyes shut against probing stems, but that was the least of her worries. I couldn't see what was happening inside her clothes, but the pool of blood seeping out from under her back told the tale. I stood there and watched for several minutes until she stopped moving and Kala fell silent, her animist hymn at an end. She collapsed in a heap, fully spent. I went to her, sat behind her, eased her close. She didn't object. She didn't fear me. It was always the way. They could trust me. They knew. I wasn't there to harm them or turn them in. It was the aura of Sigil. They knew I was only there to help, as blood-covered stems of heather slid from Tuanach's mouth. Thorns returned to leaves, and petals drooped. I cradled Kala in my arms. "It's okay," I said, allowing a slug-like tentacle to exit my ear. "My name is Bertram Belasco. I was alerted to your existence when you took your third victim. I run a network dedicated to supporting people like you. Serial killers, for want of a better term. The Mounties haven't pieced things together, but they'll find you. I can get you out. I have a passport for you in my bag, and flights are booked. I can take you to the States. But you have to agree. Do you agree, Kala Piak? Will you join my network and kill for me?" Sometimes they thought about it, weighed the pros and cons, took time to make sure I was legit. Kala didn't. She was in no state, and she didn't care. She simply nodded, eyelids flickering. It's all Sigil needed. It wriggled its tentacle to her throat, slid out a proboscis, and stabbed her. For a moment, Kala's eyes widened in shock. Then, as quickly as it had struck, the tentacle retracted and slunk back inside my ear, having deposited a small lump of matter under her skin, coating her, making her his, ours, a member of the SK network, in which, as an animist, she'd excel. The world was going to become that bit more deadly, and the craving my master had would be fulfilled. November 28th. The peaceful life of Kala Piak comes to an end when 5 friends visit her guest house in Tukik. Initially friendly, their true intentions emerge when they reveal they've seen a video online. Footage secretly recorded by a hiker showing Kala performing animism. Desperate to create a viral video, they pressure her to perform and make them famous. She refuses, and the confrontation turns dark. Threatened with violence, Kala reveals the Eskimo magic she was born with, using a houseplant in self-defense. It starts to strangle Nuvok. His friends hit her over the head to stop the act. Panicked, thinking her dead, they throw her from a cliff to hide their crime. Kala awakes mid-fall and sings for help. Arctic heather at the base of the cliff answers the call. Her animism, now tainted, has a taste for revenge, and she has the names of 5 who can satisfy it. Way, terminal, dread, 1. The announcement. The loudspeakers crackled to life, sending a sharp hiss of static through the cavernous, dimly lit terminal. The noise was jarring, a sudden intrusion in the uneasy silence that had settled over the travelers, who were slumped in their seats, fatigue etched deeply into their faces. The endless delays had worn them down, and now they were too exhausted to glance up. The air was thick with the stale scent of burnt coffee and damp, worn-out carpets. A suffocating blend that only added to the growing sense of unease. Then, the announcement came, each word clear, yet eerily mechanical, carrying a disquieting undertone. Attention, all passengers. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, all flights are canceled indefinitely. Please remain in the terminal. Do not leave the airport. We apologize for the inconvenience. The voice was devoid of emotion, a cold, detached command that sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. Murmurs of frustration, tinged with fear, spread among the passengers, their voices rising and falling like the tide. Overhead, the departure boards flickered, the once orderly rows of destinations and times now spiraling into chaos as every flight switched from delayed to canceled. The fluorescent lights above seemed to dim in unison, their sporadic flickering casting long, jittery shadows across the floor. The terminal, once bustling with the energy of travel, now felt vast, cold, and hollow. A tomb of missed connections and lost hope. To the unseen, hours dragged on, though no one could tell whether it was hours or mere minutes. Time had lost its grip, slipping through the cracks like the insidious cold that seeped into the bones of those huddled in the terminal. People tried to make themselves comfortable, reclining awkwardly on the hard, unyielding plastic chairs, some curling up on the cold, unforgiving floor. Others wandered aimlessly, their eyes hollow, faces pale under the flickering lights. The airport staff, usually a constant presence, had vanished without a trace. The food courts stood empty, their colorful signs now dark, and the enticing smells of food had long faded. Even the ever-vigilant security personnel were nowhere to be found. The only sound was the low, relentless hum of the air conditioning. This dull drone draped the terminal in a blanket of oppressive silence. Occasionally, The rustle of a traveler shifting uncomfortably, or the faint tap of rain against the massive windows broke the quiet. Still, these sounds only served to amplify the growing sense of isolation. The terminal's once familiar noises had transformed into something alien and unsettling. A young woman, clutching a frayed boarding pass like a lifeline, approached the information desk, her footsteps echoing eerily in the empty space. "Excuse me?" she called out, her voice trembling as it reverberated off the walls, swallowed by the emptiness surrounding her. "Is anyone here? What's going on?" Her voice lingered in the air, unanswered, before fading into the void. She turned back towards the scattered passengers, her heart pounding. Then, something caught her eye, a fleeting movement in the glass's reflection, a quick and fluid shadow slipping away into the dim corridors leading to the gates. She spun around, eyes wide, but saw nothing. The same lifeless scene. Yet something had changed. The air felt thicker, heavier, charged with an unseen menace. It was as if the terminal itself was watching, waiting. Others began to sense it too. Paranoia spread like a contagion, infecting one passenger after another. Whispers grew in intensity as people shared their sightings. Dark shapes glimpsed from the corner of their eyes, only to vanish when looked at directly. A man, pale skin glistening with sweat, swore he saw a figure. No, something, standing in the shadows near the baggage claim, its eyes gleaming with a cold, malevolent light. His voice cracked as he recounted the encounter, his gaze darting nervously around the terminal as if expecting the shadow to return. 3. The departure. The terminal descended into a deeper, more oppressive gloom as night fell. The few remaining lights flickered and buzzed, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways, their edges fraying as if they could reach out and ensnare the unwary. The temperature dropped, a biting chill creeping into the air, chilling the travelers. It was a cold that wasn't just physical. It carried the weight of something ancient and malevolent, something that didn't belong in the world of the living. A family huddled together near a gate, the mother clutching her children tightly, her eyes wide and wild as they darted around the room, watching the shadows with growing terror. A businessman, his suit now wrinkled and his tie askew, paced frantically near the exit doors, tugging at his tie as if it were strangling him. Others remained rooted to their seats, too afraid to move, their eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet wide open with fear. Sleep was not an option. The darkness held many unknowns and unseen threats. Then, a sound came from deep within the terminal. A low, rhythmic thudding. Distant at first, but growing steadily louder. It was the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing through the deserted halls. But these weren't the footsteps of a person. They were too slow, too heavy, and each step seemed to reverberate with a dull finality, like the tolling of a death knell. Panic erupted. People screamed, bolting in all directions, their frantic movements chaotic and disoriented as they searched desperately for an escape. But the exits were sealed, the heavy glass doors locked tight, the windows impossibly thick, distorting the view outside into a surreal, shifting landscape that offered no hope of escape. The shadows were no longer content to linger at the edges. They moved with purpose now, fluid and sentient, slithering along the walls, creeping beneath doors, stretching across the floor like dark tendrils seeking out the terrified passengers. One by one, the travelers were claimed. The shadows reached out, ensnaring them and pulling them into the darkness. Their screams echoed briefly, only to be abruptly cut off as the shadows engulfed them and dragged them into the abyss. Those who tried to hide found no sanctuary. The shadows seeped into every crack and crevice, relentless in their pursuit. The terminal became a hunting ground. The shadows of the predators and the passengers their prey. For the truth, the terminal was silent once more, save for the occasional crackle of the intercom and the distant, echoing thuds that marked the end of yet another life. The air was thick with the lingering scent of fear and despair, a miasma that clung to the walls, the floor, and the air itself. Then, as if in response to the bloodshed, the final announcement came, its tone eerily calm, almost soothing. This is a final boarding call for Flight 66. Passengers, please proceed to Gate D for immediate departure. A small group remained, huddled together, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and terror. They stared at each other with hollow eyes, their faces pale as the full horror of their situation sank in. The gate mentioned in the announcement was at the far end of the terminal, a place none had dared approach. It had always been shrouded in mystery, blocked off by barriers that hinted at endless construction, yet no progress was ever seen. Now, the barriers were gone, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor that led to a single gate. The gate loomed ominously at the end of the corridor, its door slightly ajar. A harsh, unnatural light spilled out from within, bathing the area in an eerie glow. The light was too bright, too white, too wrong. It wasn't the light of salvation or escape. It was the light of something far more sinister, a beacon drawing passengers into the unknown, Compelled by a force they couldn't resist, the survivors began to move toward the gate, their feet dragging as if weighed down by an invisible burden. The closer they got, the more they felt their very essence being pulled from them, their bodies dissolving into the shadows, their souls ripped from their forms and dragged into the eternal void that awaited beyond the gate. As the last of the passengers crossed the threshold, the terminal plunged into complete darkness, the oppressive silence broken only by the faint, lingering whispers of the lost. In the deserted control room, empty screens flickered with static, showing footage of an empty terminal, devoid of life, as if no one had ever been there. Now, a silent, empty shell. The airport waited patiently for the next group of unsuspecting travelers, ready to ensnare them in its endless, inescapable darkness. The intercom crackled one last time, then fell silent. Outside, the world continued, blissfully unaware of the horrors within the terminal. Inside, the shadows waited, patient and hungry, knowing that sooner or later, more victims would arrive, forever lost in the terminal's eternal guilty party. 2.5 hours after touching down in Innsbruck and boarding the SUV that waited to greet her, Amelia Carver's overnight expedition came to an end at a squat, crumbling structure in the rugged terrain of Samanatal Valley, from Dublin to Austria to Liechtenstein, from 12 a.m. to 6, from civilization to desolation, and she still didn't know if it was worth it. Looking at the building, little more than an abandoned mound of concrete, it was difficult to see how it could be. She hadn't accomplished anything of note since last year. She wasn't expecting to receive any awards. There were no contemporaries she still wanted to meet, and even if, by some chance, she was to be acknowledged for her endeavors, she had no desire to receive a tacky statue. Not that it mattered. She was contracted to be here, so she was, at least this year, promised to be different, since Bertram was introducing something new, and she'd made her own assumptions about what that meant. A special guest, an unexpected attendee, one that would be worth turning up for if it was him. "Sona, you're not gonna throw me a bone?" she asked the driver as he stopped by the secret military installation, which has been constructed by Nazi forces during World War II. Not so much as a nod or shake of the head, the driver, mannequin-like in black suit and mirrored sunglasses, said precisely as many words as he'd said since collecting her at the airport. A sum total of 0. "Cool," said his fare, adjusting the Venetian half-mask that covered the left of her face before popping the passenger door, the fabric of her crimson gown rustling as she got out. "Good talk. Thanks for the riveting repartee." Out of the vehicle, in the pale morning light, Amelia shut the door and straightened her skirt. Gravel spat like an angry rattlesnake, as the driver stomped the gas and crunched away. "Rude," said Amelia, tottering on heels towards the entrance, a rusted steel door partially concealed by tangled vines. Exactly the kind of place she wanted to spend the first evening of the last month of the year, when she could be curled up watching TV. But here she was, pushing through a squealing slab of history to meet another expressionless brute, who was as conversational as the one who'd dropped her off. "Hey," she said, as the passage she'd entered closed around her. "Am I last again? I'm always late." "Shucks." The grunt showed no emotion while placing a barcode scanner type device against the scar on her neck, allowing a beep to confirm her identity. While he did this, she removed her phone from her clutch and tapped on it to display the invite she'd received, which was also scanned and accepted. Once done, the guard stepped aside, allowing her access to a drape-covered door. "Thanks," Amelia said, maintaining eye contact with the goon while adjusting her breasts. "So, is it true? Is it abyss?" No response. The bouncer flicked his eyes back to the wall. Amelia sighed and pulled the drape aside, stepping into a better lit chamber that she lost sight of immediately when a pair of calloused hands fell over her eyes. "Guess who?" came a gravelly voice, laced with playful menace. Amelia peeled the hands away and turned to face their owner. A beast of a man wearing jeans, a white cotton waistcoat, and a wolf's head mask. Blue eyes stared from its sockets, his lips curled up within its maw. Wolfclaw, always a pleasure, of all the associates she'd met since joining the network, Wolfclaw was the one she liked most. He had a sense of humor to go with his violent nature and was capable of faking social niceties. "Carver," he greeted. "Thought it was you I heard coming in behind me, looking pasty as ever. Still not getting any sun? Still got the same machete?" Amelia asked, peering over his shoulder at the curved weapon strapped to his back. "Thought it might have broke from overuse. Heard it's taken 30 heads this year. Not jealous. Old Betsy's stronger than she looks." The masked man grinned. "What about you? I remember you saying last year how your kill count was too low. Any success ramping things up? In Ireland, not as much as I'd like," she said, rolling her visible eye, the taped-up hole of her masquerade mask concealing the empty socket of the other. "Came in with a solid 13, 3 more than last year, but shy of the 20 I wanted. An improvement is an improvement, and you are a more discerning kind of killer. Targeting assholes who mock the less fortunate and lack empathy is a task in and of itself. Unless you're starting to feel less philanthropic." "Nope." Amelia shook her head, turning away from the wolf-headed killer. "If I'm compelled to get my hands dirty, may as well clean some shit up. Anyway, never mind that. We better grab seats if there's any left. Bertram starts on time, and we're late. The interior of the chamber had been prepared for Bertram's event. Rows of chairs arranged before a makeshift stage holding a podium. Spotlights casting shadows on red curtained walls. The seats were occupied by figures in various states, some in their work clothes, boiler suits, leather aprons, lab coats, military fatigues. Others in more casual attire, some sporting face coverings, canvas bags, chrome constructions, cliched hockey masks, or things that had been assembled from strips of flesh. Some displaying faces not even mothers could love, but all unmistakably killers. Indeed, said Wolfclaw, following Amelia towards the front, where she'd spotted a pair of vacant seats. Wouldn't do to be kicked out when I'm in with a chance of best massacre. You deserve an award for that. Amelia nodded. Speaking of awards, I guess you heard about the new one? Wolfclaw said, turning into the front row behind her. Lifetime Achievement Award. Arguably long overdue for a ceremony that honors psycho killers. Half-fuckers are near immortal. The question, who's the inaugural recipient? Amelia finished, nodding at the motley crew of weird and wonderful murderers she passed as she made her way to a seat. You know what they've been saying on Instagram? Well, it's got to be Abyss, Wolfclaw said, taking a seat alongside her. How many times did he win Killer of the Year? 12? Does anyone have a better record? Not only that. Best dismemberment, most depraved violation, goriest cut, you name it, he got it. Every year for a decade, until he vanished. He's the GOAT. Would be an insult to give it to anyone else. The question is he alive? All the rumors that circulate about him being locked away by the government, retiring to live as a lumberjack, being turned into mints by a final girl? Fuck, Wolfclaw gasped as she organized her dress on her chair. I know, the ultimate humiliation for serial slashers. Not that, Wolfclaw interrupted, touching her arm. That. Amelia followed his gaze to the left of the stage, where three men stood partially obscured behind curtains. Two of Bertram's goons, and him, clad in an oil-stained pair of overalls, feet stuffed into boots that were coming apart, head concealed by a latex S&M hood, replete with zips, straps, and buckles. The 7-foot-tall, hulking form was unmistakably Abyss. The shifting, awkward posture, the way his arms flexed, the movement of his head, glitching like stop-motion animation. She'd only seen videos, but she knew it was him. Wolfclaw was squinting behind his mask as he studied the granddaddy of killers. He's bulkier than I expected, taller. But look how they're restraining him. Is that a neck manacle connected to prods? Amelia had noticed this too. But before she could consider it, the lights dimmed and the piped music came to a halt. A hush fell over the crowd, and all eyes went to the stage as the curtain on the right was thrown back, allowing a bearded man in a suit to stride out, beckoning applause, which he got in buckets from all, because this was their benefactor, Bertram Belasco, long-serving head of the serial killer network. Amelia took part in the adulation as he soaked it up. In the 5 years since he found her and signed her up to his club, she'd come to respect him like everyone else. Being selected was nothing short of an honor. It meant her killer credentials were on point. It meant, despite the exorbitant subscription fee Bertram charged for membership, that she had access to all SK network resources: anonymity, medical aid, protection, and sanctuary when required. Luckily, she hadn't needed to avail of much yet, being a small fish in the pond. A little treatment for wounds, some hacking to remove her image from CCTV footage. All in a day's work for the network. "Welcome, friends," Bertram said when the applause died down. "Delighted to see you all again. Our venue is a little less luxurious than usual, but there's a reason for that, one that will become clear soon. Before we start, I want to take a moment to say that this year's nominees for our various awards were highly impressive. Kill of the Year, Sickest Mutilation, Most Creative Execution. You've outdone yourselves, and I want to congratulate everyone for their efforts. You've made me proud, and, well, just well done." "Weird start," Wolfclaw whispered, and Amelia nodded. Bertram seemed more somber than usual. However, he blurted then, perking up as his eyes went to Abyss. "Before we get to that," a surprise, a murmur rippled through the crowd, and Amelia felt goosebumps on her arms. "As you know from my invite," their host went on, "we have a special award tonight. And along with it comes a special guest. There's been a lot of speculation online as to who it might be, with one particular name being mooted more than others. Well, I don't want to keep you or him waiting any longer, so let's kick things off with our first ever Lifetime Achievement Award. Won't you join me, please, in welcoming Abyss?" Applause filled the room as Abyss was guided out by the goons. His footsteps as he stomped to the podium were louder than the chants and cheers around her. But why was he secured like that? Was he here against his will? Was he a danger to his own kind? "I know this looks weird," said Bertram, as Abyss was brought to a halt alongside him, quivering as though volts flowed into his neck. But sadly, dear Abyss is not the force of nature he used to be. He's had to keep a low profile these last 10 years. 2 decades as the world's most prolific serial killer is something that can take a toll. He absorbed more pure guilt than anyone before him, and handled it like a trooper. but there's a limit to all things. And 10 years ago today, he reached his. He had to be put away for everyone's safety. Just one more kill would have broken him, released the guilt. And we weren't ready. What's he talking about? Wolfclaw hissed. Amelia shook her head. She had no idea. But whatever it was, it had the potential to be epic. As he spoke, Bertram retrieved an award from behind the podium. A grotesque creation made of twisted steel. For you, he continued, presenting the award to the monster. With gratitude. But this isn't your true reward. A polished lump of metal in your hands is nothing but a weapon. I know what you'd really like is closure. Abyss closed his fist around the award, gripping it like a bludgeon, while Bertram raised an arm and clicked his fingers. Amelia sat up in her chair, watching the curtains at the back of the stage part, and another suited mook wheel out a crate. This is different, said Wolfclaw. What's the old boy up to? Does everyone remember Diamond Lagoon, 1995? Abyss's most infamous rampage. He took out an entire settlement in one night. An incredible feat of savagery. 67 residents, 66 victims, because one slipped through the net. A plucky young girl. Don't you hate them? We've all been frustrated by one of those. For Abyss, though, in a 20-year reign of terror, she was the only one who ever got away. The only blemish in an otherwise spotless career. And guess what? Bertram moved to the edge of the stage as his man undid latches on the crate. We have her here tonight. Gasps in the crowd as the guard opened the box and a disheveled woman fell out, barely getting her hands in front of her before hitting the floor. Her face was lined with age. Her hair was gray. She whimpered where she'd landed by Abyss, whose head was turned down as he watched. No way, Amelia said, as Bertram and his goons walked off the stage. Are we going to see a live kill? You're free, Abyss, Bertram called as he slipped through the curtains. Let it go. The crowd had gotten to their feet, and Amelia joined them, all eyes on the scene, keen to see what would happen next. And what happened next was like watching a movie sped up. 2x, Abyss threw his head back and howled. The woman screamed up at his hood. Abyss drove the trophy into her skull. The onlookers in the crowd cheered and jumped. Amelia's mouth fell open. Wolfclaw whistled. Abyss turned to the crowd and started to shudder. Not from being electrocuted, from something else. What was it Bertram had said? Amelia wondered. One more kill would have broken him, released the guilt. The shuddering turned to convulsions, and Abyss roared. Not now in fury, but in pain. He staggered, his body shaking violently. His head jerked back, and with a sickening crack, it split open, ripping through latex and spilling blood and bone. to the floor. 3x. Black mist poured from his mask. Smoky tendrils shot forth, snaking through the air and filling the room. Writhing, maleficent tentacles that multiplied and wriggled like worms before plunging into the heads of those below, squeezing screams from their lungs. Their bodies convulsed and their faces contorted as the guilt from abyss took control. Amelia watched chaos unfold, beginning with Wolfclaw, who stared wide-eyed in horror from his mask as he took his machete, lifted it to his neck, and sliced through. Hot, scarlet liquid splattered her face as she looked away, her eye falling on the killers behind her, who were turning their weapons on themselves, tearing at flesh, gouging out eyes, ripping their own jaws off in a frenzy. 4x. Tendrils of mist withdrew from falling bodies, returned to the hovering mass over Abyss's corpse. Amelia tottered, unsteady, on heels slipping in blood. The screams were abating. The crowd was diminishing. Not many remained on their feet. Not many continued to be overwhelmed by the guilt of their actions, encouraged by the fingers of mist that had entered their brains. All of their brains, even hers. And that's when she realized she too had been invaded. But she, alone, was still standing, with a tendril of smoke connecting her to the pulsating mass, which was slowly drifting towards her from the stage. Drifting, oozing, throbbing, shrinking as it flowed into her head, filling her mind with images of her victims, bullies, narcissists, sociopaths, bigots, gaslighters, abusers, jerks. Am I supposed to feel bad for killing them? Her inner voice queried. Am I supposed to break under the weight of massive guilt? And that's when someone hit. Pause. I knew it would be you. A voice behind her, Bertram's, said, and she turned, the last of the guilt devouring her soul. Thought we'd have more time to nurture your talent, but Abyss's willpower was waning. He was going to release it soon, one last murder or not. And it needed to happen in a controlled environment. It needed to feast after being locked away for so long. And it needed to choose a new host. What is it? Amelia asked, aware of fresh darkness inside her. A force as old as time, Bertram said, taking her hand. An insatiable force that needs to be fed. But keeping it fed is not easy. And keeping it restrained, even harder. You see what it does when it's not. But it takes a certain kind of person. Abyss was that person before. 30 years he held it, a record. But it fucked him up. He was a discerning killer too, once upon a time, an idealist. He focused his darkness, like you, till he was chosen. What have you done to me? I'm sorry, Bertram said, leading her away from the carnage. As its guardian, I have to oversee the transference. It's never easy, but it's necessary. I do it to keep the world safe, believe it or not. Safe from unstoppable evil. It picked you today because you could hold it. But it's going to change you over time. It will naturally make you more feral, less controlled. A rampaging beast, if I'm honest. But it will also make you a legend. The best of the best. With the guilty conscience fueling you, you'll be Killer of the Year for as long as you want. And the next Lifetime Achievement Award will be yours. Amelia's mind was racing. His words sounded insane, but she could feel it. A growing hunger that demanded to be sated. A hunger that would make her a queen. Then I suppose I have work to do, she said, her voice sharp like the switchblade in her clutch. Bertram nodded. And I've a new network to build. Welcome to your new life, Amelia Carver. Glad to be here, she replied, accepting a kiss to her hand. I look forward to carving a fresh abyss. You're my rock. The bride and groom danced their first dance together. The room dark, the spotlight on them. Imogen Carlson tried and failed to grit her teeth. God, nothing was simple these days. Not even the simple acts of jealousy and resentment. How cruel this dance was to parade their beautiful normalcy for everyone to see. She glared. Her mother leaned over, but not too close. Gosh, no. And whispered into her ear, "Do try to smile, dear. You're positively green with envy. It is your cousin's wedding, after all. Couldn't you try to look happy for her? And do something about those straps, will you, dear? They're, slipping," she winced. Pun intended? But Imogen did as her mother requested. She was already on the fringes of society since her accident. She ought not to exacerbate things. Imogen sat upright straighter and forced a smile onto the thing the mirror insisted was her face. She then dug out the dress straps, which had started to dig into both shoulders. The married couple, hands clasped, faces inches apart, spun across the floor in sync. Now and then, they snuck a kiss, much to the delight of the onlookers, who cheered and whistled. The muscles beneath Imogen's eyes twitched. All she wanted was to stay at home and hide away in her room, behind the safety of closed curtains. Yes, lock herself away and await any news from the doctors and scientists. Of course, there was the possibility that they might never understand her issue or find a cure. Mom and Dad had said she couldn't isolate herself like a leper if that were the case. When she retorted that she was a leper, they'd only looked at her with wounded puppy dog eyes, and here they were, watching a couple do everyday things, like touching and kissing. She'd never experience these things again, unless she were okay with screams in response. The song wound to an end, and the crowd roared and applauded. The couple opened up the dance floor to to friends and family, waving them over. The music changed from elegant to upbeat. Imogen's parents got up, hand in hand. Her father reached out for her, then stopped before he could hurt himself. "Would you like to?" he said, nodding towards the dancing mob. When he saw the slight shake of his wife's head, he answered himself, "No, I suppose you better not." Acidic bile stung the back of her throat. God, she wanted some cake. But she was afraid that people would watch her as she ate, horrified, but unable to look away. "Kill me now," she muttered under her breath. "Oh, if I did that, I wouldn't get to introduce you to Alan." Imogen jumped and yelped. It was Martin, the groom. He wore a tux and held a glass of white wine by the stem. He was smiling at her, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, heart squelching in her chest. Imogen frowned. What was he here to do? Make fun of her? Pull a prank on her? She'd had enough of that from the local kids, who posted jelly packets through their letterbox. She supposed Mum had told her sister, who told her daughter and her groom-to-be. Not that they wouldn't have been able to see that something was wrong with her as soon as she showed up. During their first dance, the only light sources were the DJ's spotlight and Imogen's skin. "Who's Alan?" Martin's smile widened. He was tipsy. "An old school chum of mine. I thought you two would hit it off." Imogen's furrowed brow deepened. Martin had to be joking. And why on earth would anybody hit it off with someone like me? "You can see me, right? Because you're looking positively radiant tonight," said Martin with a wink. Imogen stared at him. He faltered. "Sorry, not funny." The corners of her lips twitched. She could see why her cousin liked this man. He was kind and genuine. "It was a little funny," she conceded. He relaxed. "Alan's a great guy, and he just arrived. He couldn't make it to the ceremony. Otherwise, you'd have definitely noticed him. There had to be a catch." "Okay, well, what's wrong with him then?" Martin nodded, as though he'd expected this. "Alan had a little accident a few months back. He's been struggling with it. I thought the two of you might have a lot to talk about." Imogen winced. Man, she had a tongue of acid sometimes, like the rest of her. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." She shook her head. "Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's meet the guy." Martin downed the last of his wine, set it on the table, and took a fresh glass from a passing waiter's tray. "Great. Come, I'll introduce you to him. He's right over there. Now listen, he's a little sensitive about his looks, but..." Martin stopped and looked at her, swaying. "I don't think you'll judge him too harshly on that account." Imogen gasped when she saw him. Alan was sat alone in the far corner of the room, where the shadows swam, nursing a drink. He appeared to be a stone golem. "Imogen," slurred Martin, gesturing back and forth. This is Alan I was telling you about. Alan, this is... Imogen stepped forward with a genuine smile for the first time in months. She cut Martin off. Imogen, she said, it's a pleasure to meet you, Alan. Alan groaned, eyes fixated on his drink, which the servers had served him in a metal beer stein. Yeah, sure it is. You've had your look at me now. I haven't finished having my look at you, Alan. Alan flinched, looked up, then gasped. Oh, he said. Oh, she answered. Martin laughed, his glass of wine half empty. All right. I'll pat myself on the back and leave you two to get to know each other. Have fun. She sat beside Alan, who could not take his eyes off her. She removed her polyester gloves to reveal her transparent, gooey green skin. Car crash, 2 lorries, each carrying mutagenic agents, collided. Nobody was hurt, except for a certain Imogen Carlson. She was trapped in her Pinto when the chemicals combined to make something new. Now I can't touch organic materials without absorbing and dissolving them. Alan nodded. He'd ripped his suit where he'd tried to pull it on over his gravel surface. I was backpacking alone when I got the phone call that my mum had fallen down the stairs. I rushed home, taking a shortcut through the haunted mountains. I ignored all the warning signs telling you not to. I guess the mountains took it as an insult and cursed me to a life of cold stoniness. Mum's fine, by the way. Her heart ached for him. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Must suck not being able to touch anyone. Doctors much help? She shook her head. Nope. They've no idea. Mine neither. They said they've never seen any rock like it, that it doesn't seem to be organic. She gaped at him. She looked from her green, gloopy hand to his rocky one. She looked at him, a question in her eyes. Alan took a minute to register the importance of what he'd said, eyes widening. And then he smiled and answered the question by taking her hand with his. He did not scream. There was no bubbling or sizzling. Imogen did not feel the strange sensation of eating via something other than her mouth. She'd experienced it before, and it wasn't pleasant. Wow, she said, unable to say more. Alan leaned closer. Would you like to dance, Imogen? She thought about it, then threw her anxieties to the wind. Yes, I would, Alan. On their way to the dance floor, Alan stepped on a man's foot, breaking it. Alan didn't notice the screams for an ambulance. She had his complete attention. On their way to the dance floor, Imogen brushed a woman's hair with her ungloved arm, eating the strands. She didn't notice the little shriek or the woman's death glare. He had her complete attention. Doctors have called it thingification, after the thing from Fantastic Four. My guys are calling mine blebitis, like in The Blob. I see you've also spent a lot of time hiding away indoors, glued to the screen. I have too. Guess we're not so alone now, huh? She nodded. Question. The Blob. Original from 1958 or the 1988 remake? Alan pondered as they started to dance, a wide circle of empty dance floor opening up around them. The original's got its charms, but for me, the remake takes the cake. Blasphemy, I know. Imogen couldn't help but smile. Those were her thoughts exactly. She leaned forward and kissed him on his stony lips. When I first saw you, my legs turned to jelly. Alan, grinning after the initial shock of the kiss, pulled her close so they were dancing skin to skin. And when I saw you, it warmed my cold stone heart. Imogen sighed and rested her head against his chest. What a wonderful wedding.